So let's start with this. We're getting to a point where technology is no longer just something you use. It's something that can be directly integrated into your brain. And I know that sounds like science fiction, but it's not. This is already happening. Brain computer interfaces, or BCIs, are systems that take electrical signals from your brain, decode them, and turn them into commands to control an external device. So instead of using your hands or your voice, you're using your own thoughts. Now, at a basic level, your brain is constantly firing electrical signals through your neurons. And with the right sensors and algorithms, we can measure those signals and translate them into actions, like moving a cursor or controlling a robotic arm or even helping someone communicate again. Now, there are different types of BCIs. Some are non invasive, like EEG headsets that sit on your scalp, kind of like how I'm wearing these headphones right now. Others are more invasive and require surgical procedures where electrodes are implanted directly into your brain. And that's where things start to feel a little bit more real and a little bit more scary. Because once you're talking about implants, you're not just interacting with technology anymore, you're integrating with it. And something I didn't really appreciate at first is how difficult it actually is to read these brain signals. Like we say it reads your brain, and we say that pretty casually, but in reality, that's a very difficult task because your brain is incredibly noisy. There's electrical activity happening all the time, and researchers are trying to isolate the meaningful signals from all that chaos. Now, a lot of systems use EEG, which picks up electrical signals from your scalp, but that also captures a lot of interference from stuff like blinking, muscle movement, and even just simple background noise. So, a huge part of this field is not just working on hardware and improving the hardware, but it's also crunching down on the signal processing algorithms and getting machine learning to be at a better place where we can cut out a lot of this excess noise. So, like these algorithms basically are trying to figure out things like, okay, does the signal mean the user wants to move something, or is it just a background noise, or did he just blink? And even with all this progress and studies that we've done on it, we're still not exactly perfect at that. Now, one of the most real world examples right now is something called Neuralink. There was a patient who was paralyzed who received an implant from Neuralink, and he was able to control a computer, play video games, and communicate just using his own thoughts, which is kind of insane when you think about it. I mean, imagine just sitting there not having to move, just thinking about what you want to do, and it can happen. But even in the Neuralink example, there are still big questions: long term safety, reliability, and especially questions of data privacy, because some people have to own these chips and things that will be implanted in your brain. And because we're not just collecting data from your phone or a smartwatch, we're collecting data from someone's brain. And that's where this stops being just, oh, hey, that's a cool piece of technology or something you would think about getting, because it starts to become so much deeper. Now, there was actually a novel published in 2025 called The Dream Hotel that imagines a world where your brain has implants in it, and these implants can monitor and influence your own dreams. And that sounds pretty crazy, but where you look at it and where this technology is heading, it doesn't feel impossible anymore. And that's where things I think really start to shift, because if your thoughts can be measured, interpreted, and maybe even influenced because someone is going to have access to this data, that's not just innovation, that's a fundamental change in what it means to be a human. I mean, so the real question now is not just can we build this technology, because we're already working on it and some tests have been successful, but we now need to start thinking about what's going to happen when we have this technology readily available and try to integrate it with everyday society. All right, so the first major topic we're going to talk about here is between the medical benefit and personal autonomy. And at first, this one feels pretty straightforward because the benefit side of this technology is incredible. We're talking about people who are paralyzed, being able to control a computer, communicate, even interact with the world again just by thinking. That's not just convenience, it's restoring someone's independence. And that's why a lot of early BCI development has focused on medical use. But once you look a little closer, things get more complicated because these systems aren't perfect. They rely on interpreting brain signals, and those types of signals are very noisy and very difficult to read. So there's always some level of uncertainty on how your thoughts are being translated into actions. And that means the system can get it wrong. Right now, that might just means you move a cursor incorrectly or you click on something that you didn't mean to. Not a lot of impact there, but as this technology becomes more advanced, these errors could potentially matter a whole lot more. And that's where the autonomy question and discussion comes in. Because even if the system is inherently helping you, it's still interpreting your brain activity. There's a layer between what you think and what actually happens. And that can get kind of confusing and spawn questions about different definitions of responsibility for one's actions. And it also raises a question of at what point does assistance become intrusion? Because if a system is shaping how your thoughts turn into actions, is that still fully you, or is it you and the system? There's not really a clear answer to that now until this technology gets integrated and we have more studies done on this type of stuff. So, while the benefit is restoring ability and improving lives, the risk is slowly losing some degree of control over your own mind. I mean, that's a scary thought. And the closer this technology gets to the brain, eventually, I think it's going to be a lot more difficult to separate the two. Okay, so the second topic we're going to be discussing is the tension between innovation and security. And this one really comes down to speed because this field is moving fast. There's a lot of investment, a lot of excitement, and real breakthroughs happening. But with this speed comes some risk. There's a concept in an article I read called brain jacking, which is basically the idea of these neural devices being hacked. And this isn't just a theoretical concept anymore. Devices like deep brain stimulators already exist. Neuralink is closely already being implemented and experimented with, and these types of devices directly send electrical signals into the brain to influence behavior. So if someone gains access to these types of systems, they're not just accessing regular data. They could be potentially influencing what someone actually feels or does. And that's where things start to feel very different from how we normally think about cybersecurity. Because usually we think about hacking, we're thinking about someone hacking your phone or someone hacking into a computer. Things that are clearly have a boundary between us and the actual device. But these neural technologies are removing this boundary and removing the separation. So now the technology becomes a part of you. And if someone hacks this, it's not only compromising the system and technology, it's compromising your own body. And the risks, Joe, just beyond data theft. I mean, we're talking about someone intercepting signals, alternating the outputs, and maybe even influencing perception, decision making, or how your body moves. And yeah, that sounds pretty extreme right now, but it becomes a lot more realistic as the technology gets better over time. I mean, the challenge is that innovation doesn't slow down for these types of concerns. There's pressure from outside sources, companies to move fast, build this technology, improve it, be the first to perfect it, and be the first to get it on the market. But security, on the other hand, takes a lot more time. It requires things like testing, regulations, and safeguards. And historically, technology often moves forward first and tries to deal with the fallout and consequences later. I mean, look at the atomic bomb. We created that in a time of war, and we created it relatively quickly without considering risk and had to deal with all the nuclear fallout after. But with something like Neuralink and these implants and neural devices, the cost of getting security wrong is just so much higher. I mean, the issue is, do we push forward quickly with this technology and try to figure out some sort of security along the way? Or do we actually slow down, take a step back, and try to analyze and see if the technology is even safe to be released yet? I mean, we also have to think about scaling factors. I mean, we're going to be releasing these over, I mean, countries across the world. I mean, we're going to have to do a lot of tests before that happens, because this isn't just about protecting your phone or some regular old device anymore. We're trying to protect people's minds and their own bodies. So it's very important, I think, topic of discussion, and hopefully more people will bring attention to this as the technology rapidly gets better. All right, now we're going to talk about and compare the concept of societal progress versus surveillance and control, because this technology won't exist in isolation. It's going to be shaped by the societies that adopt it. And one thing research shows is that public acceptance of BCIs varies a lot depending on multiple factors like age, education, and environment. Some groups are more open to the technology, especially if they see clear benefits, but others are more cautious, especially when it comes to privacy and safety. And that's pretty important because adoption isn't just about whether the technology actually works. We've seen that it can work. It's more about whether people can actually trust it. And trust can look very different depending on what part of the world you're in. I mean, for example, in places with stronger privacy protections, there tends to be a lot more skepticism and regulation. In other places where large scale data systems are more normalized, adoption might happen a lot quicker. And you can even compare how this might play out in different countries. In a place like China, where these large scale data collection centers and systems are already in place and a lot more common, BCIs might be integrated way more rapidly into existing societal systems. Whereas if we look at the US, it might be a more market driven type of technology where access depends on who can afford it. And that can introduce another different kind of issue, because now we're not just dealing with adoption of the technology, we're introducing some sort of level of inequality within the society, because some people might have access to more advanced or secure systems while others are left with less reliable and secure versions. And that could be a big risk across a society, because once these systems involve data that is brain data, I mean, it's the most personal type of data that anyone can have. It's not just about what you do, it's about what you think all the time. And if that data is collected and used at scale, I mean, it opens the doors to things like monitoring, profiling, and potentially even influencing someone's behavior. Because something that starts out as useful and has more medical implications, like these BCIs are seen to have, right now we're trying to focus on improving someone's health, improving overall communication. Once those things are mastered, eventually someone's going to gradually try to turn and research into how can we make these more enhancing, and it could gradually turn into something a lot more controlling. And once these kinds of systems are in place, it can be very hard to undo. So the ethical question here isn't just really about the technology itself. I mean, I think it's pretty inevitable within the next few years, maybe decade, these devices might show up on the market. And we need to ask and question things about like who controls all the system, where does the data go, who has access to this data, how is this going to be applied at scales like globally. I mean, because what's starting out as just mainly overall medical progress and trying to help people, eventually the technology will be so good and more available that we could start to see problems with surveillance, and people do not take lightly to being surveyed and their data being accessed by anyone. I mean, privacy is, I think, one of the big important issues. And hopefully, we raise questions and have some sort of regulations when this technology inevitably comes to fruition. So, stepping back, brain computer interfaces are not just new technology, they're fundamentally different because they interact directly with thought, identity, and control across everything we've talked about: medical benefits, security risk, and societal impacts. There isn't one clear answer. There's no obvious line where we can say this is where it becomes too much. Instead, it depends on a few key things. One, how deeply the technology is integrated into the brain. Two, how secure and protected these systems actually are. And three, the kind of society that develops and uses them. And I think that's one of the big takeaways here. I mean, we already know that we have the technology in a sense. We're just trying to build on it and improve it. So we know we can make it, but we also have to choose how to use it. Because if this type of system can access and influence your own thoughts, I mean, we have to question who is actually in control. I mean, not only can this technology be used by other people in terms of them viewing your brain data and knowing all your thoughts and things like that, but how will this technology interact with existing technology? I mean, think about right now we're having AI boom across the world and get used in everyday life. So imagine one of these neural chips implanted and integrated with AI. So maybe you have like an AI assistant that just reads your thoughts and you can kind of interact with them. But then what if something goes wrong with the AI program? That adds another layer. So are you in control, or would the AI be in control? Or even if you don't have AI, is someone hacking your neural chip? Are you in control, or is someone else controlling your own body? I mean, it's kind of like the with great power comes great responsibility type thing, where this is such a monumental type of technology that, I mean, whoever thought we would be here this quickly? I mean, 20 years ago, this would have seemed like something out of like a Stephen King novel or some sort of movie. But in the next few years or decade, we could readily see this happening. I mean, it's not just something that someone thought up. I mean, we're working on it. It's happening. And if we're not careful, we might end up a lot closer to our science fiction future than we might like to think. So I think having these ethical discussions between larger society is super important, and hopefully we can figure out some way to safeguard this technology and have it be more useful and more constructive to everyday life than it be just a security risk.